Howdy guys, Jimmy Song here. Welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Tech Talk Q&A. This is the show where I go over all of the news that I put into my newsletter. My newsletter goes out every Monday, and basically it's a good way to catch up on some of the tech things that have happened in the past week. Anyway, let's get to some of the sharing stuff. Let's share my application window. Where is the application window? So as always, my Tech Talk newsletter goes out every Monday. It went out earlier today, and there's a bunch of stories on here. We'll be going through all of those, but before I get through all of those, I want to remind everyone that my book is on sale at Amazon for both the Kindle and the paperback. It is apparently the #1 new release in business finance, which is kind of strange. It's also like the #1 new release in a couple of other places. It's also #3 in e-commerce. I don't know how Bitcoin is e-commerce, but it is. So I get it's in there. So that's kind of nice. Really appreciate that. So many people have written reviews. There's a couple of 1-star reviews. The first one, the Kindle formatting is wrong, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. All right. So there, apparently, according to my publisher, there's some process that Amazon goes through that messes up some of the really delicate formatting that's, that can be kind of hard to do. But this one, this guy is clearly a Bitcoin SV guy, extolling the virtues of Dr. Craig S. Wright. If you guys could, please report this as abuse. This guy is clearly a troll, hasn't bought it, is just trying to make this book, get worse reviews or something like that. Despite those two, it's still 4.3 out of 5 stars. So anyway, just wanted to point that out. Would appreciate it from you guys if you have that. All right. Let's talk about programming blockchain. My seminar is coming to New York City on May 16th and 17th. It is the next one. It's in May, right around Consensus. I think it's right after Consensus. I'm going to do book signing at Consensus probably, and I'm also speaking at the Magical Crypto Friends Conference right before that. Anyway, if you are interested in learning about all this stuff and you want to get it all done in a couple of days, this is the seminar for you. And I have taught a lot of people this material. So, I've gotten pretty good at it, including 50 students at the University of Texas. I think it's over 500 people that I've taught at this point. Not exactly sure. I'm going to have to count it up at some point. Anyway, another interesting thing. So please, register for it if you are interested in that. Okay, let's take a look at some of the stories. Completely offline Bitcoin transactions. Now, this is a story from about a month ago, but I wanted to post this as a way to tell a lot of the people that are saying, "Oh, you need the internet in order for Bitcoin to work." That's not actually true, and in fact, Groobles tells you exactly how to make Bitcoin transaction work without any internet. You can do it with satellite and using some sort of TX antenna, which can broadcast Bitcoin transactions using a local mesh network. And doing this can be really interesting. And basically what Groobles goes through here is using Electrum and a hardware wallet in order to do all this with a Go Tenna and so on. Anyway, it's a very instructive tutorial. Might want it in case the internet goes down, I guess. But yeah, it just proves that you can do certain things despite the assumptions that other people make about the network. A lot of those people are trying to create FUD around Bitcoin. So it's good to have resources like this on hand. All right, now for some discussions of some BIPs on the Bitcoin Dev mailing list. This one is interesting. Hash time lock bonds. So you might have heard of hash time lock contracts. That's essentially how a lot of the Lightning Network works. You have a time lock which says, okay, if by this time something hasn't happened, I just get my money back. Otherwise, the other person can sort of take the money, and that's assuming that you've paid them some amount of money. That's essentially what a hash time lock contract is. What's interesting here is this idea of a hash time lock bond. And this is basically kind of like, if you think of a bond in terms of normal usage of that term, oftentimes if you get arrested for something, you have to post a bond, and you get that bond back when you show up for court. But if you don't show up for court, then they take that money away. So that's what this is all about. It's incentivizing good behavior by locking up some of your money, and this is something that, as Alistair Mann has pointed out, isn't served that great by Bitcoin. It's not one of the use cases that anyone really uses Bitcoin for, but given the right script, you can do something like that. This is what Alistair calls good behavior bonds. And you can, and it's very similar to hash time lock contracts, except it's something like Alice wants to send her dad an email. She posts a bond of like some amount of Bitcoins. And her dad has like some sort of filter on the server, and then once he reads the message, he can give that money back. It's a bond. You only keep it if what they claim wasn't true, right? Like if I'm claiming, if I am, say, some fraudulent guy from Australia, and I am trying to claim that I am Satoshi, a hash time lock bond would be a very good way to do to try to prove it if I actually was Satoshi. If I'm not, I would never agree to something like that because I would lose all the money in that bond. So that's kind of the idea. It's a really interesting pre-BIP. I really hope something like this does happen, and I would encourage you guys to take a look at the whole concept, because it is kind of a very new use case, and especially if you're an entrepreneur or something like that, and you want to play with some of this stuff and see if you can make a business out of it. That's the sort of stuff that you should be looking at. All right, removal of reject network message from Bitcoin Core, BIP61. So BIP61 added a network command called reject, and that's to give like other nodes that are sending it bad data exactly why you're rejecting that data. And this can be pretty useful, especially for debugging and things like that. Certainly, when I teach my class, I tell them, hey, like, look for the reject message in case you created your transaction wrong, or it has like a high S value or something like that. It'll come back with an error message, reject message telling you exactly why, and this can be very useful. It's toggled by this enable BIP61 command line option, and has been disabled by default since 0.18, which hasn't been released yet. So right up until 0.18, it's been on by default, but starting with 0.18, it's kind of getting deprecated. It's not on by default. You have to enable it. But what Marco is proposing is let's start removing this and like get rid of this thing, because it's a part of the code that we have to keep updating and so on, and you have to have like finer grain error messages and things like that. but really, if you have something with your transaction, you shouldn't be relying on other nodes to tell you exactly why you're doing something wrong. You should be relying on your own full node or your own software to tell you whether or not it's valid. That's not the sort of thing that you should rely on your peers to tell you. That's the whole point of having a full node software, is so that you know exactly whether or not it'll get accepted onto the network. So when you're sending invalid stuff, it's sort of a you know you're sort of spamming the network, and you're probably going to get banned. And that's usually the behavior that you can expect from other nodes if you're sending in bad stuff. So anyway, it's an interesting proposal, but one of the things that Marco is doing here is asking, hey, who's actually using the reject message and what do you use it for? Very it's a good discussion to have, and it's enlightening as far as what the network messages are for and so on. More thoughts on no input safety by Anthony Towns. AJ, he's out in Australia. He's a very good developer. He's also put together a lot of the SegWit version 1, which has in it some sort of sig hash no input or op mask or something like that, which we'll discuss in a second, but also Schnorr and some other stuff. And it's all getting rolled into SegWit v1, which is going to be a big a big upgrade. Anyway, the two things that are sort of competing here for sort of this payment channel transaction that is signed in a very particular way are sig hash no input and op mask. Sig hash no input is a little bit kludgier than op mask. Op mask would basically mask out the parts that you're saying can be anything when you sign it, whereas sig hash no input is more like, okay, well, just ignore the input parts. So I did talk to Anthony about this a few months back, and I think I'm more convinced on the op mask side than the sig hash no input. But anyway, he's pointing out here some of the malleability vectors that can come as a result of sig hash no input and some other safety issues that come along with it. And he's, I think, advocating for op mask, and I agree with him. So interesting stuff to take a look at. I would encourage you to read more into it when you get a chance. All right, let's take a look at this one, lightning reference rate. So this is from Nick Baccia. This is the fourth part of, a very long series on the Lightning Network. But yeah, I mean, there's right now routing and sort of like publishing, information about your route and things like that. It's not really standardized. And basically what this post goes through are network reference rates and what your particular rate is and so on. It's a good way to let other nodes on the network figure out if your node is the route through which the payment should go through because it's got the cheapest rate and has the capacity and so on. It's very interesting stuff, and it's more for routing operators or node operators in the middle of the network. If you're an end node, this is going to be more or less kind of transparent to you, or at least hopefully it will be once the Lightning Network is has more capacity and so on. But it's a very good proposal. I think if you're thinking about running Lightning Network nodes, this is something that you should take a look at. All right, and let's take a look at the Lightning Network statistics. There are 7,450 nodes, which is up from last month. 39,000 channels, but the network capacity is the most interesting thing. It's over 1,000 Bitcoin at this point. That's $4 million. And this is despite the fact that most channels are below like $50 or something like that. So pretty amazing that we've come this far and that we have, $4 million on the Lightning Network to be able to transact. Of course, that's a tiny fraction of the 17, 18 million Bitcoins that exist out there in UTXOs today. But it's still pretty cool that it continues to grow. And I think a year ago it was less than 100. So oh, actually, I think the Lightning Network 1 year anniversary was like a few days ago. So, in a year, it went from like basically zero to over 1,000. That's a lot, and it's a huge milestone. It'll be this is one of the statistics that I think a lot of people will be paying attention to as we go forward. Just how much money is locked into the Lightning Network and how much can you route through it and so on. Right now, we're still in sort of beta mode. That's why there's like a network restriction, or most nodes don't open channels that are above a certain amount and so on. So and you're not supposed to use it for very large amounts because we don't know the security properties. But it's been online for a year. As it continues to stay online, I think we can expect it to stay online for even longer. So, the capacity I believe will continue to increase as there will be more people motivated to use this stuff as more use cases prove themselves. As Pierre Rochard said on Twitter, the big thing that we need to look for are killer apps on Lightning. And Lightning does allow for sub-Satoshi payments. So if you're an entrepreneur, this is another area where you should be really thinking hard about, okay, what micropayment stuff can I do that would make sense? That traditional websites have like completely ignored because it wasn't worth the transaction cost of 30 cents that like PayPal charges or something like that in order to do. Well, you can now do like sub pennies. And it's really the cost of the bandwidth between, or like the transmission and maybe CPU power necessary to transact on that stuff. So, what can you do to make that work? And this is something that you should really think hard about as a way to, make more money, make Lightning and Bitcoin better. All right, last story that I want to point out. This is Tweetstorm from Samson Mao, and I don't know Chinese, but he does. So he was pointing out some interesting things about what's going on at Bitmain. There are some lawsuits against Bitmain, possibly suppliers that are not getting paid. According to Samson, they also sold the S15s at a loss as a way to get keep their customers and like sort of undercut WhatsMiner and Dragon Mint and all the competitors or something like that. I don't know if that's true or not, but apparently there's no S17 yet, and the yield for the 7 nanometer chips is very bad. I totally believe that, just because it's a very new process, and if you know anything about chip manufacturing, new processes don't yield very very high returns. I mean, 60% is very low. I mean, like at least their S9s, they're at TSMC. I think Bitmain was getting upwards of like 97%. So 60%, that means like you have to throw away 40% of the wafers. I mean, that's pretty bad. I mean, that's going to almost double the cost of, well, at least increase your cost by whatever 2/3. All right. So from what I hear, Bitmain is cherry picking good chips from the tape out to create demo miners. I mean, I'm sure every mining manufacturer does that. TSMC say this year they have no real 7 nanometer capacity available for crypto. Wow. So I mean, that doesn't surprise me. A lot of phone manufacturers and are looking for smaller and smaller chips that provide more and more horsepower, basically. And all of those manufacturers are essentially phone manufacturers. Nvidia and AMD, I guess maybe they're using it for their new GPUs or something like that. AMD had to switch from Global Foundries when they closed their 7 nanometer plants. Yep. And Qualcomm, yeah, TSMC is pretty much the best of the bunch. I mean, as far as foundries go, they're like sort of the gold standard. And part of Bitmain's giant advantage for a long time was that they had a very good relationship with TSMC. It sounds like maybe because they're not paying their bills or their finances aren't looking that great, that their relationship with TSMC maybe isn't as good as it used to be. Anyway, yeah, I mean, this is not looking great for the Bitmain IPO. I mean, they were supposed to go IPO last summer, then Q3, Q4. Q1 is pretty close to being over. I'd be really shocked if they ever IPO, and if they do, I can't imagine that their stock would do very well, if at all. Anyway, those are some of the stories. Once again, you can sign up for the Bitcoin Tech Talk newsletter using the link in the show notes. Let me stop presenting and come back on screen. Let's see if there are any questions here. Fake Toshi rage quit. Yeah, that was pretty funny. He apparently made all of his tweets protected after there was a bot that basically copied his tweets so everyone could see them. Fake Toshi had blocked everybody. I guess he was afraid that more people would be laughing at him from his ridiculous tweeting. I mean, it's a well-known fact that this guy's a scammer. I still don't understand why anyone listens to that guy. I mean, Calvin Ayre must have a lot of money to be throwing around. All right, when Schnorr, don't know. I think there's a soft fork that's happening before SegWit V1, and that's probably going to take some time. And that's involving fixing some of the time warp attack. There's some controversy about that. LND TX fees versus BTC TX fees, long-term viability. Yeah, I mean, Lightning Network TX fees are going to drop lower and lower as people figure, as there's more nodes on the network. The nice thing about the network effect is that there are more routes as you increase nodes, and people increase connectedness and so on. So I imagine Lightning Network fees will, I mean, they're already very tiny, but even if the main chain network fees are pretty high, Lightning Network fees should be fairly low. I still expect them to correlate somewhat, but it'll be significantly cheaper on Lightning. All right. Let's see. Any hope or promise in sidechains for scaling aside from Liquid? Does Liquid essentially work for that kind of scaling? Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways in which sidechains can scale. I mean, you could have all sorts of different sidechains, and they can add whatever technology that they want. I mean, Liquid's really nice because there's no proof of work there, and it's I think 2/3 plus one of the nodes have to sign. So it's more like a signature network and a federated network, but it's very, very fast. The nice thing about Liquid, and I don't know why no one's done this yet, is you can do something like submarine swaps. So you can trade some of your Liquid coins for more, to get paid money on your Lightning node. So once you have that, then it's just going from sidechain to main chain, but there's no on-chain transaction on the main chain whatsoever. So that would be really, really interesting, and that's something that I've been talking about for a while. All right. Do you believe everything in crypto should be open source? What are your thoughts on patents in this space? I think the concept of intellectual property is a very broken concept, and I mean, the whole idea that you can own an idea is kind of stupid in my opinion. But I don't like the way copyright laws and patents are used by corporations to essentially keep things in limbo for a long time. Um, uh, as far as everything in crypto being open source, if you are public, then yeah, you need to be open source because no one's going to trust you if you don't. No one's looked at your code. So I think there are closed source tokens. I don't know why anyone trusts them in any way, shape, or form because they could create new coins out of thin air anytime they want, and no one would be the wiser because you can't check the code. So I mean that's why it's important for at least public things to be open source. Now, if you're a private company, no, you don't need to be open source. And I guess you can be a cryptography company. If you mean cryptocurrency, yeah, by nature they are all sort of public, so you should be open source in order for people to be able to verify that the coins are there. Um, all right. What are the advantages of Python over, say, JavaScript for Bitcoin programming? I mean, the reason why I wrote my book and all of the exercises in Python is because it's a very easy language to learn. It has native big integer support. For almost every other language, you have to import some really weird library, big int or something like that, in order to do all of the operations. The code doesn't look as clean because you have to use the big int add and multiply and subtract and stuff like that in order to make things work. Whereas in Python, you can have as large numbers as you want, and it'll just keep storing it in that variable, and you don't have to do weird things to make it work. What do you think of Blockstack and their definition of a DApp? I'm not aware of their definition of a DApp, and I don't know that much about Blockstack, so I can't comment. What do you think about the economics of more tokens being locked up on Lightning Network versus being sold on the market? It would be interesting. That means people are using it as a method of payment for. I mean, that's why you would lock up any amount of Bitcoin on the Lightning Network. It's for a method of payment mostly, not for store value. If you're using it as a store value for later, then that would be another thing altogether. Yeah, I suspect that at some point a lot of bitcoins will be locked up on Lightning, but I wouldn't say I would say because store value is the killer feature. I don't know if it would be the majority. Why hasn't Rootstock taken off yet? Well, I mean, it's a new project, and you need some time for people to get comfortable with it. I wouldn't say too many people are comfortable with it right now, so that would be why. I don't know how long that'll take, and it might be a while. And who knows? It might be never. I don't know if there's really necessarily a market for what they're selling, which is Ethereum style smart contracts on Bitcoin. A lot of the Ethereum style smart contracts aren't very popular on Ethereum. But I mean, I'm not sure they would be popular on Bitcoin. Um, all right. Any plans to write a lightning book? Yeah, I'd like to. That would probably be my third technical book for O'Reilly if it gets to that. The second one would probably be programming a wallet because a lot of overlap between wallet and programming a wallet and programming a lightning related things. And there but you need to know certain concepts before you can get to lightning, so I think as a progression that makes more sense, and that's probably what I'm going to teach next. Can you give me a referral for a person who can build me a token on Blockstream Liquid? No, not really. I mean, I guess Samson, you can go ask him. All right. scholarships for New York. I don't have any scholarships at the moment, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, it is a bear market, and the companies that do these things. Yeah, I mean, there just isn't as much money for this sort of thing right now. So, you know, that's just how it is in a bear market. So it is what it is. All right. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to go find somebody that maybe. I mean, like Liquid is more a commercial thing, and you're not going to just be able to get into it as like some Joe Schmo like you can on Ethereum. And yeah, I mean that's part of their value prop is that you know the people on the side chain, you know, the companies on the side chain are, you know, sort of interacting with each other. It's supposed to be a layer for them. Yeah, that said, you know, I don't know. Maybe you can find somebody. All right. Anyway, that's about it for today. Thanks for joining me for this past half hour or so. You know, again, this show happens every Monday afternoon, and you know the newsletter goes out Monday morning. Please, please do take buy this book if you are interested in this stuff. Of course, there is an open source version that's free. If you do translate the library in this book into a language other than Python, and you are the first one to do it, I will send you a signed copy of this book. And I don't know if you've seen any of the signed copies on Twitter, but it's not just my physical signature. I take a picture of it, and then I digitally sign the SHA-256 sum of that picture and post it on my website. So it is also digitally signed. So none of the signatures that I give for my book are forgeable because it's unless they have my PGP private key, and that's something that I put into and put a lot of thought into. I hope this becomes sort of the new standard, at least for the cypherpunk inclined. For signing books, because I don't want forgeries to be out there. I want people to know whether or not it's actually signed by me. And anyone that has a signed copy of my book has that proof and can download it personally and check it. And then if they are to, you know, give it to their heirs or sell it on eBay or something like that, they can prove that this is the case. Of course, I'll also know which, you know, like, you know, if it's on eBay and I find out about it, then I might know, you know, who's selling it and stuff like that. But that's okay. I'm totally okay with, you know, free market stuff. Anyway, yeah, I did do a book signing at South by Southwest. I'll be doing a book signing probably at Magical Crypto Conference and at Consensus. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I'm very excited to do all of this stuff. It's been a pretty fun ride. Anyway, thank you guys. Hope all of that helps you. This song is done.